everyone, welcome back to another exciting interview with an expert in their field. I sat down with my friend Darren Rawlings, who is a member of the American Civil War Roundtable of the UK and runs American Civil War and UK History. He's also the social media manager for Emerging Civil War. Daz is a big fan of the English Civil Wars, and particularly, he wanted to talk with me about the Great Battle of Torington, which took place in February of 1646. We sat down for an hour and talked about things such as the causes of the war, what happened to the residents, hauntings, mass graves, a prison church, and so much more. I'm going to link Darren's channel and his work down below. Enjoy the interview. Welcome back, everybody, to Reardon Plays. We're at episode 2 of our Haunted Kent series, and I'm here with Darren Rawlings. And Darren, would you mind telling us about today's episode and what the viewers have in store today?
Yeah, so we're actually going to step away from Kent and we're going to go the complete opposite end of the country down to the West Country. And we're going to be discussing something that I've been commemorating for over 20 years now. And that is the Battle of Great Torrington, which happened on Monday, February the 16th, 1646. It was the last battle of the First English Civil Wars.
So why is this battle so important? Why is it, as you commemorated it recently, why is it still being celebrated or reenacted?
Partly because, again, like I said, it's that last battle of that First English Civil Wars. It's the last sort of rebellion from the because so England's split and torn down the middle during the English Civil Wars, but there are pockets of royalists still down in Devon, North Devon, that is, and Cornwall, which again is down in the West Country of England. So I'm in the east, southeast. That's in the southwest, so complete opposite end of the country. But again, like I said, some areas are staunch royalist from the beginning, and some are staunch parliamentarians. Now, what you find is there are bigger pockets of royalists in the West Country. I don't know why that is. I couldn't explain that, but there just is. But again, also the one of the reasons the Battle of Torrington is going to happen is because some of the leaders that are left from the Royalist Army are going to have a council of war with Charles, which will be future King of England, Charles II, which at the time is Prince Charles, of course. So he's having a council of war, and they're trying to discuss ways of, you know, getting a foothold back into England. Because at this point, the last major battle took place in June of 1645. I nearly said 1845, then I don't know why. But anyway, so the Battle of Naseby is a huge victory for the Parliament Army. It seized pretty much the victory in general. Eventually, at some point, Charles I is going to be captured, or well, not captured. He goes to Newark and he goes to the Scots, and of course, he is King of Scotland as well at this point. His father, James I, was the first king to be King of Scotland and King of England. But anyway, he goes to the Scots thinking that they're going to help him, and they actually sell him back to Parliament for £100,000. Now, the Scots at the time during the English Civil Wars would fight on who is ever paying the money. And on that occasion, they decided that £100,000, they couldn't turn that up. So they sold him back to the English. So they're in a bit of a fix. But also, if you think about it, if Charles II is captured, future Charles II, game's over. That's
Mm.
the royal family. There
Right.
are others, but he's the next in line to the throne. So, of course, Parliament are going to hear that this is going on down there. So, not only that, there are royalists, pockets of royalists down in a town, in a Devon town called Exeter. And so Sir Thomas Fairfax, leader of the Parliament Army, is going to be sent down to quell the rebellion in the West and destroy the last pocket of royalists. So his actual goal is Exeter. It's not Torrington at the time. But as I said, the royalist commanders that are down in that area are down in Truro at a council of war with Charles. That's how they're going to end up down in Devon.
Okay. Now, the outcome of this, how has it impacted, and you probably speak for a while on this, but in general, especially for our American viewers, since it's the last battle of the English Civil Wars, how has it really impacted like what the history we see today and the England we see today?
Quite, I mean, the English Civil Wars is quite a huge thing,
Mhm.
you know. People just, the problem is it's not taught enough in schools these days, so it sort of
Oh,
gets
really?
forgotten about. It's very sad because if you think about it, it's just as important as the American Civil War as far as, you know, democracy is concerned, say, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
although they wouldn't have seen that at the time, but you know, what the Parliament were doing, they were fighting against, you know, the royalist regime that was saying that we can rule without Parliament. And they were basically saying, look, the people should be heard, the people should have their say. And of course, that's what Parliament's all about. Although later on down the line, um, Cromwell's going to go sort of a little bit, you know, he's going to be doing a similar thing to what Charles was doing in a way. But that's a long story and that's another
Hmm.
story. But, you know, it is so important. But I don't think people realize how important it is because, again, it's not in the forefront of people's memories. Or I can probably I probably say that a lot of people probably don't even know about the English Civil Wars. Let's put it that way. It's very
Right.
sad,
I mean,
but
even
this
in
is so
England?
important. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, people would do, but there are a majority of people. I guarantee if you went up to them and asked them about the English Civil Wars, they wouldn't have a clue.
Huh.
The English Civil Wars are free wars as well,
Right.
ladies and gents. You know, so you have the first one from 1642 to 1646. And then there's another one not long after that. And the thing is, what happens with Parliament is it's taken over by the army as well. So that doesn't help. There's a lot of infighting within the Parliament as well because the army doesn't get paid, and they're like, "Well, we've just fought a war for you, and you haven't paid us." And then, of course, Cromwell starts rising to prominence. He
Yeah.
he declares himself Lord Protector of England, and we become a Commonwealth for 10 years. And people don't even realise that for 10 years, England was a Commonwealth. It wasn't
Hmm.
a you know, ruled by a king or queen.
Wow.
And then the third English Civil Wars is again, you've still got those staunch royalists that want the king back. They hate Cromwell's rule. Cromwell, if people know Cromwell's history, they're going to know also that he goes to Ireland and does some horrible things
Right.
to the Irish people, the Catholic communities in Ireland, um, because of his beliefs.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's an absolute mess, the country. Um, but people are yearning to have that royalty back on the throne because they can't part with Cromwell anymore. I mean, he bans Christmas. I mean, it's not Christmas to
Not
like we
Christmas.
know it, but you know, he's a staunch Protestant. You know, he's
Hmm.
really proper religious.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as well, I think what people got to understand from these time periods. And I think when I was recording a podcast a couple of weeks ago, someone brought it up. I was talking about medieval Europe.
Mm.
And the way this guy explained it to me, he said, what you've got to remember is we can't see it the way they saw it, but religion was the heart and soul of everything you did at that
Right.
time.
Uh-huh.
If you didn't go to church, you got fined. If you didn't, you know, and that's where you went to get your news and
Uh-huh.
everything. So let's see, like the church is a little bit like social media of today, you know. It's a real difficult situation for this country. And as I
Mhm.
said, it's so sad that people don't realize how important it is. Then on the other side of things as well, the English Civil Wars, you see the first professional armies come from that as well. So the
Oh,
first British units you start seeing the red coat for the first time.
cool.
So in general, really, what you think, what I'm saying is, sorry, is
Mm.
from this eventually, once you know, because there's going to be some more turbulent times ahead. We're going to end up with James II, who's a stout Catholic, England's Protestant country at that time, so that causes another war way far down the line in the late 1600s. But from that, you're going to see Scotland and England are already united throne wise, but you're going to see them unite properly, and that's when you're going to see Britain start forming, and then that's when you're going to see the British Empire eventually. You know,
Right.
so it's all got the Civil War's got that knock-on effect. The biggest thing that comes out of it is when Charles II comes back, he hasn't got that power that his father had. And again, as I said, one of the reasons the war starts is because Charles believes that there is nobody higher than him apart from God. So who are Parliament to tell him what he can do in his own kingdom? And that's the way he has been brought up by James the First.
Sure.
That's the way what he believes. But when Charles II comes back in 1660, he is not going to have the same powers his father has. And so now, if you think about it, what is the king or queen's job in England? It's a head of state. That's it.
Yeah.
They although they can sort of put their two pence in, the Commonwealth is not great for England at all. And also because we've had a war, we're struggling
Hmm.
financially and stuff as well. And also because of the way Cromwell's acting, we sort of get isolated from Europe a little
Oh,
bit as
yeah.
well, even though we're isolated anyway because of, what Henry VIII did,
Right.
100 odd years before that, 200 years before that. Um, but it's a real difficult period for England.
Hmm.
But what you're going to see is this emergence of firstly a professional army and parliament and democracy where people get to have their say, not as in person, but by voting for somebody elected for their town or their city to go into parliament and have their say.
Hmm.
So that's what's so important about the English Civil Wars. Like I said, they're down in Truro having this council of war. Now, I like to bring in a character called Sir Ralph Hopton. Sir Ralph Hopton was down in Cornwall, as I said, council of war with Prince Charles, future King of England. His intentions were to make his way to Exeter to relieve the siege. Now, Thomas Fairfax has come down from London down to Cornwall, Devon, sorry, and sieged Exeter. Now, Exeter at the time was an old English city, had city walls, so the people were in there, and now they were bombarding it. And now that's when Fairfax hears about Sir Ralph Hopton and his Cornish army. So he decides to split his forces and take the roads to Truro. Now, the thing is, there's some similarities to Gettysburg here a little bit because it's the roads that are going to lead
Right.
them there. The biggest problem for the Royalist army is they get bogged down in the mud. So there's a rainstorm. This is February. The English country roads are not friendly.
No.
So they decide to stop in Torrington. Firstly, so his wagons can catch
Hmm.
up. This is Sir Ralph Hopton. Um, and the rest of the army can catch up.
Hmm.
So that is basically how they're going to end up in Torrington. And again, the main roads are going through Torrington and down a hill to a little hamlet called Tallypool, and that goes all the way to Cornwall, that road. And it has done for 1,000 years,
It's
or
it's
whatever,
still it's
since
still a
the
modern
road.
road today, right? You can
It
drive
is,
on
yeah,
it.
and it's still one of the main thoroughfares for the bus. So the thing
Oh.
is that the way you can always gauge a main road in England is if
Uh-huh.
there's a bus route on it.
Ah, okay.
There's a
Good to
bus route
know.
on it, it's still a main road, technically. Although you
Wow.
see it, you wouldn't think it was a main road, but it's still it's not obviously they built, bigger roads and
Hmm.
better roads around it, but if you followed that road, you would go to Cornwall.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
still exactly the same.
Hmm.
And we'll get on to the importance of my friend Alan Mitchell's house in a minute, because
Okay.
again, a lot of this I've learned from going 20 years. I have a good friend that lives down in Taddypool called Alan Mitchell,
Mm.
and he is the the Oracle of Torrington, the Battle of Torrington. He's wrote a song on it and everything. It's a
Nice.
fantastic to have someone down there that's so passionate, just like us. And that's why
Right.
we got passionate into it. But
Hmm.
anyway, so they're down there. So they get to Torrington. Sir Ralph Hopton, he sets up headquarters in the Black Horse pub, which you can see behind me here,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
Still standing.
really cool. So let's tell you a little bit of history about the
Hmm.
Black Horse pub. So the origins of the Black Horse Hotel, which it technically is a hotel and inn, as you could imagine, this is a main thoroughfare for people travelling down to Cornwall, so they need somewhere to stay. Torrington's the perfect town to stop, have some supper, maybe a rest in, one of the rooms in the hotel. Now, this is saying that it dates back to the 16th century, but that's the Black Horse and its name. But from what Alan Mitchell has told me, this pub goes back a lot further. He said it's at least 1300s. So
Wow.
what it was before, I don't know, but let's
Uh-huh.
just say 16th century. And again, it served as a vital stop for travellers and traders crossing North Devon. And again, so this is where Sir Ralph Hopton's going to set himself up. Okay, so let's talk about Fairfax. So I said obviously he was going to Exeter, he's sieging Exeter. So what he does is he decides to split his force. He leaves some at so I believe he's got about 20,000, I believe, which again is quite small compared to an American
Yeah.
Civil War battle, I know. But he
Mhm.
was about 20,000, but he leaves half of them. Well, no, he leaves about 12,000 there, around about that. Or he's going to take 7,000. No, sorry, Hopton's got 7,000, but he's going to split them anyway, and he's going to take 10,000 or so with him down to Torrington. Again, the conditions of the roads are not great,
Right.
but they're going to head towards, and they're going to see what they can find. Now, the battle actually starts on the fields outside of the town, and I'll just this is what the account said. And this is from the original account. It reads in the accounts that two bodies of men meet 6 fields breadth from outside of the town, where they discourse coarse language and musket balls through the hedgerows. So they were
Sounds like an
swearing
army.
at each other, and
That
you
checks
know.
out.
Now there's an important thing. Now there was two passwords, and in actual fact, Sir Thomas Fairfax, they had to change the password for the Royalist. Also, remember at the time uniforms are all similar,
Right.
so I think, and I might be getting it mixed up, but this is all coming from Alan. What's
Hmm.
Alan's told me. I think that they had one of the armies had a sprig of something in their
Uh-huh.
helmet, and the others had like a white, you know,
Like a
handkerchief
band.
or something tied to
Uh-huh.
their arms so they could recognize each other. But they did have passwords,
Mm.
and one of the sides had, I think it was the parliamentarians had to change their password, and Sir Thomas Fairfax didn't realise, and he was going, check out what's going on, and nearly got shot by his own men.
No.
Now it's weird because you think they would
Yeah.
recognise him, but this is a 17th century.
Yeah.
So, it's not
Right.
like he's got a Facebook profile, has he?
Everyone has the same facial hair, so,
Yeah. So anyway, it starts on the edge of town. Like I said, the password for the Royalists was "We are with you,"
Uh-huh.
which is the basis for Alan Mitchell's great song, which you can hear on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
If you watch the episode, very early episode, I did a podcast with Alan.
I'll
Yeah,
go
he
check it
sings
out.
that great song at the end. It's fantastic. Now imagine singing that song on the anniversary in the Black Horse pub, drinking beer on that same
Yeah.
night. It's just fantastic. Everyone sings it. The pub's got so much great history to it. So some of the wood paneling and everything is quite rare, apparently,
Nice.
for that kind of history building. So it's got a grade 2 listed, and that means you
Uh-huh.
can't do anything to it without, well, you'd never be able to do anything to it. Of
Oh,
course, it's got
okay.
ghost stories attached to it, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, save that to the end. That's a fun one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, what the Royalists have done in preparation, because obviously they have had scouts out and they did know that, uh, well, they sort of had inkling that, they could, or that Fairfax was sort of in the area, but they didn't really know where he was. So just as a precaution, they put in East Street in Torrington, they put a barricade up.
Hmm.
And this was obviously to stop, the army if they turned up or anyone coming through. But obviously, at this point, when they're out on the edge of town, these guys get overrun by the parliamentarians and they're pushed back to the barricade. At this point, Sir Ralph Hopton is in the Black Horse pub eating his supper when he's going to hear the gunfire anyway. And he's told, "We've got a problem. There's 7,000 musketeers and God knows how many thousand foot
Yikes.
in East Street right now. The barricade is quite good. They can't break through.
Mm-hmm.
But so one of the captains rides around some people's back gardens and actually rides through somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
And when Al told me this story, I was like, really? Seriously? But apparently he rode through somebody's house and got behind the barricade and he managed to get some others through there and they managed to whoever was manning the barricade, it spooked them and they run off.
Oh,
The barricade
okay.
gets pushed over,
Wow.
and literally all hell breaks loose
Oh no,
in the
they come
town of
pouring in.
Torrington. Now, these
Oh.
streets are all windy and narrow.
Uh-huh.
This is old English town.
Yep.
The army then is just all they're running in confusion.
Mm-hmm.
The royalists, the parliamentarians are streaming into town. And again, as I said, at this point, Sir Ralph Hopton has got on his horse and he's ridden um, from the Black Horse pub.
Mm-hmm.
And then he is stabbed in the. So he comes across the body of men in one of the streets in Torrington, and he is stabbed in the face by a pike, and the pike goes through his mouth and
Oh
under his
no.
ear. And
Whoa.
it wasn't fatal though, and he falls off his
What?
horse. Now, Ralph Hopton was not a small man.
Wow.
So getting him back on his horse was difficult for the troops that were
That's
there. They
amazing.
managed to get him back on his horse, and they managed to get him away from that situation. But
Wow.
the battle doesn't last very long. Like I said, they overwhelmed the
Mm-hmm.
royalists very quickly. And before you know it, they're all streaming down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
They're all streaming down this hill to a little place called Taddyport. And down in Taddyport is this 13th century bridge, which has been widened for cars now.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic, fantastic piece of architecture.
Uh-huh.
It's all made of stone and everything. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's and it crosses this quite important river called the Torridge.
Yeah.
Torridge drains down from Exmoor National Park, which when it rains, it can get quite high. And Alan's house is right there as you come off the bridge
Cool.
on if he was coming down, it'd be on the right hand side. Now, his house dates back to 1300s, part of
Mm,
it, and next door to that was a smithy,
cool.
and this is where the royalists are going to have their last stand. And
At
again,
his
as I said,
house, in his front yard.
yeah, at his house, pretty much. And again, remember that's the main road out, so the royalists are all
Yeah.
streaming down there
Mm,
in complete confusion. Now, again, Torrington actually sits up on a plateau. It's really strange. Like when you
yeah.
get when you're traveling to Torington, like I said to the other week to Al when I was down there, I said I can't imagine how they even got the army down there. They must have
Right.
been so tired because the roads are, there's a couple of really huge inclines, and one of
Mm-hmm.
them we call the roller coaster, and you can literally see the other side of the road from the other side of the road
Mm-hmm.
as you're going down this hill. And we've always joked about it over the 20 odd
Yeah.
years, but it's crazy to think that these guys marched from Exeter and marched these roads,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, back then as well, with the roads not being asphalt and everything like that. But anyway, they're all streaming down this hill,
Mm,
and that is where the Royals are going to have their last stand. But again,
yeah.
the bridge that you're going to see, you know, in a picture
Mm-hmm.
is wider than what it would have been at the time. So it would have been very easily defended. And again, this is
Right.
February. It's been raining. The river's high. You're
Mm-hmm.
not crossing the. I guarantee you, you are never going to cross this river by foot. You would be swept away. It's
Right.
that powerful. In the summer, you wouldn't even know. It'd be like a mill pond. But this time of year, it's pretty deadly. So the only way across is that bridge. So they set up a defensive line in the smithy across the bridge, and they actually keep the parliamentarians away. The
Oh.
parliamentarians don't get anywhere near that place. Now, Alan said to me that this battle is majority is musketeers.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about 7,000 in total, I think, all shooting at each other. So musket balls are everywhere. He said I mean, he's got over 2,000 musket balls in his house alone, I think.
Really?
Um,
That
yeah,
he's
he
found on the
finds them
property?
everywhere.
Mm.
He finds them everywhere in the river, in the in all over the place,
Yeah.
and he still find them today. Now, Alan's job, he is keeper of the common. That's his job. So he goes out into the countryside
Hmm.
area of Torrington because again, it's very rural,
Yeah.
and it's just surrounded by countryside. And so because that's where he's going to find all this stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
he's found a rapier sword from the battle. He's got a pike head with the wood still in the shaft.
He has a
He's got a
museum
halberd
collection.
head. He's found all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
The story behind the pike head is quite cool because somebody's found it. They've knocked on his door, and I'll do the accent. He goes, "Oh wow!" He goes, "I found this thing." He said, "I don't know whether you're interested in it." He went, "Bloody hell!" He said, "That's a pike head from the Battle of Torrington." Jesus. He said
Wow.
it was hidden somewhere. They don't know, it was put in the wall somewhere, or they found it in a joist or something in a house.
Yeah.
They
So
just found it.
cool.
You just never know what's behind the walls.
Yeah, right? Totally.
It's just crazy. But anyway, that last stand happens.
Hmm.
The parliamentarians have taken the town of Great Torrington. There's 200 odd prisoners that are rounded up or caught by the
Hmm.
parliamentarians. And that's when we're going to hear, or that's when we're going to get into the story of St. Michael's Church.
Okay.
And the prisoners are going to be put into the church.
Now the battle has concluded at this
Yeah,
point.
pretty
Like,
much. It's not a very long battle. It ends pretty quick. Once that
yeah.
barricade comes down and they start streaming into town.
Hmm.
Um, Again, it's just complete confusion. And again, they're on their way to Cornwall. They're not
Right.
coming back,
Uh-huh.
and they've been defeated. But so these prisoners are put into the church. Now, the
Hmm.
church doubles as the gunpowder store.
Of course it does.
And of course, the biggest problem is going to be that gunpowder
Yeah.
store. Now, there are 80 barrels of gunpowder in there.
Now this may be a
Now,
silly
that what
question. Is that a lot for a small town like to have in their
it
storehouse?
well, they had it because the army was with them.
Okay. Yeah,
So
makes
they
sense. Okay.
brought it along with them. They decided, let's store it in the church.
Okay.
But of course, the prisoners are in there too. Now, this equates to half a ton of gunpowder. So,
Okay.
if we put that into perspective, we're probably looking at something like at the time would be the equivalent of like a nuclear bomb.
No,
You
no.
know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
If you put it in that time
yeah.
frame,
Right.
that's what's in there.
Hmm.
And gunpowder at the time is. Yeah, it's
Oh,
deadly any time,
I
but
cannot wait
yeah,
to
this
hear what
is
happens. It's
this is not
exciting.
great. Now, I've got the actual account from a man called Joshua Sprigg, who was a Fairfax personal chaplain.
Okay.
So this is what happened. It is said that at 11:30 at night there'll be a massive explosion. The ground shaketh, a great ton of flame in the sky like hell itself. Mason, lead, and timber do fall about the town, caving in roofs of many houses, killing many men. A
Hmm.
great web of lead nailed to an oaken beam falls from the sky and kills the horse of Master Rhodes, a captain in the cavalry, right beside Sir Thomas Fairfax. A barrel of gunpowder is going to land in the square, smashing open, spilling its contents. And again, somebody
Yeah.
has lit the gunpowder and the church has just gone bang. Now, what's really
Oh.
strange about the church is obviously a lot of it was damaged and
Hmm.
destroyed, but 80 barrels of gunpowder. But the blast went up the spire, so it
Oh,
funneled that
yeah.
main charge up the
Right.
spire.
Instead of
But
out.
this has sent men and timber and masonry for miles. Like I said, most of the
Wow.
houses were flattened in the town of Torrington,
It is
absolutely
like a
flattened,
nuclear bomb completely. Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But there
Wow.
are parts of the church that survived, which is
Nice.
really weird, like I said, though. But because
Yeah.
that main blast has gone up the spire, it sort of
Hmm.
saved part of the church.
Right.
You can go in there and you can see the parts that have been repaired. What is also really cool is if you stand outside the church, or there is a stone commemorating that event, and it says 1645 on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it says 1645 is because there was a change of calendar in the Georgian
Oh,
period.
right.
And so then everything moved over a year.
Yeah. Right.
But it's got 1645 on it. So people are like, hang on, I thought it was 1646. Well, it was, but it was 1645 back then.
So what
Very
is
strange.
are there any theories as to like who lit it? Why
Oh,
the,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, yes. We know who it was.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, yes. So there was a man called Robert Watt, a North Country man he was. That's what Al always says. And he was pulled from under the rubble. Um, but he was paid 30 guineas to blow this up. By
That's a
who? We
lot
don't
back
know.
then.
But he expired from his wounds the following day. So he was silly enough to go in there and do it and didn't think about, well, how the hell am I
Do I
going to
get
get
out?
out?
Yeah.
So he
Rookie
got caught in
mistake.
the blast too. Yeah. Now, another thing about what I said about the masonry
Uh-huh.
going everywhere, and this is great, people still find bits of the church in their backyards,
Whoa.
in the river, down in Taddyport.
I love
And
that.
what they do is they'll bring it if they realise that it's part of the
Hmm.
church, they will bring it back up and lay it outside the
Oh,
church.
good.
And
Okay.
so outside the church are little blocks and bits from the blast of the Battle of Torrington. It's just so cool. It really
Awesome.
is.
Wow.
Now, what happens afterwards
Uh-huh.
is Thomas Fairfax is going to read a proclamation to the town folk of Great Torrington. He basically tells the town folk that if you behave yourselves,
Hmm.
then nothing will happen to you. But if you do raise your arms again, we will burn Torrington to the ground.
That is a
We
threat.
will we will pardon you for your whatever, but you are now subjects
Yeah.
of Parliament
Mm.
and not the king. And if you swear loyalty to Parliament,
Yeah.
then nothing further will happen.
Did they do that? Did they swear their loyalty and
They did,
okay.
because, by this point now, the
Yeah.
Royalist army is capitulated.
Hmm.
Charles I will probably be in incarceration,
Yeah.
and Charles II has now fled and is in exile.
Right.
So
Yes.
there, and along with his brothers, I believe as well, because I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember his brother, but James II, I think, is one of his brothers.
Hmm.
Of course, that's going to have a huge, huge knock-on effect later on
Yeah.
in the
Right.
Jacobite rebellion. Yeah,
Yes. Yes,
this is
that's
all
true.
related.
It is.
James, they're all related to the
Hmm.
Stuarts. Stuarts. Charles I is a Stuart, so it's Charles II. But yeah, no. So what's going to happen to the guys that die in the church? So again, they're all the royalist prisoners. They're going to be buried in a mass grave outside the church. And the mass grave is obviously still there. It's very, very powerful when you
Yeah.
walk there and see that,
Hmm.
knowing what happened on that horrible night.
Right.
And of course, a lot of these guys, there probably wasn't much left of them. It was probably bits and bobs
Yeah.
that they could just find, limbs, heads,
Yeah.
whatever. They chucked it all in this grave.
Mm.
Um, and this year we commemorated that for the first time properly with a plaque. And it's something that Al and there's an organisation in Torrington called the Cavaliers.
Mm.
Um, and as you drive, again, they've never forgotten their royalist connections. So
Mm.
even though Thomas Fairfax reads that
Yeah.
proclamation and says to the town folk, "You ever raise arms against it again, you'll regret it," there's still a sense of being a Cavalier and
Mm.
being royalist in the town of Torrington. When you
Right.
drive into the town, it says, "Welcome to Torrington, Great Torrington, the Cavalier town."
Hmm.
So this organisation, the Cavaliers, is sort of like a charitable organisation. We organise community events in Torrington, basically, and one of those is the commemorative march, which happens every year. And again, this year was the 380th. So to have that plaque on the
Yeah.
380th was quite special.
Yeah.
It was unveiled a day before, 2 days before the march,
Uh-huh.
but still great, you
Nice.
know. So I wasn't there for the actual unveiling, but of course, when we finished the march, the proclamation is read in the square. The mayor will read a speech, and then everyone goes around the mass grave,
Yeah.
lays a wreath, and that was the moment when it was unveiled to the whole town, if you would
Right.
say, you know. So that was
380
fantastic,
years in the
especially,
making. Yeah.
oh yeah,
Right.
especially after 20 years, you know. And
Mhm.
again, you know, so as I've alluded to, so I was a reenactor in the Sealed Knot, which reenacted the English Civil Wars. I got introduced to Great Torrington in 2004. Was the first time I went down there, and I've only ever missed one, and that was COVID,
Right.
which is sad.
Hmm.
Um, but every year we would go down Friday night in the Black Horse pub,
Hmm.
bore all the locals, um,
As you
you know,
should.
because you get yeah, exactly, and you get to know all these guys, you know, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. The Black Horse pub. So I'm sort of leading into sort of like the ghosty side of things now,
Let's do
particularly with
it.
the Black Horse pub.
Yeah.
Um, the Black Horse pub again, as I said, goes back all the way to the 16th century as far as a hotel's concerned.
Hmm.
Over the centuries, it has earned the reputation as one of Great Torrington's most haunted locations. Guests and staff has reported a variety of unexplained occurrences, apparitions, shadowy figures in period attire have been seen roaming the corridors and the bar area. Now, I've been in there many, many nights, and I've never really seen or felt anything or heard anything. But then you wouldn't, you know, it's a pub environment.
Sure.
It's, you know, the fire's in there. You walk in there, you smell the fire, and it's got all
Yeah.
the old oak timbers, and it's just so. But it has got a feeling about it, you
Yeah.
know.
It has
It's
to.
got the feeling. I've had the conversation with many people. Oh, I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't want to sleep here at night, you know.
Oh,
I
sure.
wouldn't want to stay in one of those rooms. And that's where people
Absolutely.
have experienced stuff up in the hotel rooms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somebody has said that they did wake up in the middle of the night
Mm.
and they did hear strange noises. They heard footsteps, and they one account was that they went down there and stayed in there, and they saw a silhouette in the middle in the corner of the room when they woke up one
That is
night. So
unsettling. That is
very
very
spooky
unsettling.
and unsettling. Now, myself, I have had spooky experiences in Great Torrington, but not in the Black Horse pub. There's another pub called the Globe Hotel. The
Mm.
Globe Hotel, I don't think was there
Yeah.
during the Battle of Torrington. I think it's more of a Georgian building,
Okay.
but still got a lot of history to it.
Yes.
Now, there was room number 4. I stayed in that one. And there was some bad vibes in there. I did
I bet.
not like that room. Now, I stayed in most of the rooms in that hotel.
Yeah.
It had a lot, about 20 odd rooms, I think. That one was spooky. I
How
can't explain
so?
it. There was some weird energy in there.
Like you didn't feel like
Did
you were
not,
alone type thing?
no, I felt like I was being watched.
Yeah.
Felt like when I was laying there, I almost felt like I had to lay facing the wall because I didn't want to know what
Right.
was standing over me. It felt like someone was
Hmm.
standing over me, watching me.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, do you know what? The only way I'm going to get through the next night is by getting blind bloody drunk.
Yeah.
It still didn't work. Still didn't work. Still felt uncomfortable in there.
Room number
I've only stayed
four.
in that room once, but
Yeah.
everyone that stayed in room number 4 said the same thing.
Got to get some ghost hunting crew in there to determine what's going on with room number four.
Yeah, no, seriously,
Yeah.
it's now unfortunately closed up. I think there was a community effort by the Cavaliers and others to
Oh,
try and get it reopened as a community space,
yeah.
because a lot of the pubs declined in Torrington. Now, when I first went in
Mm.
2004, there was probably 20 pubs in Torrington. Now you're looking at about 3 or 4. But that's because
Wow.
of the decline of, say, for instance, things like COVID, this,
Yeah.
that, and the other. And in the winter, there's no need for people to go to
Right.
Torrington. You know, in the
Sure.
summer, yes, people are passing through. There's campsites in the area. You know, it's a beautiful place. But in the winter, it's very barren. You know, in a way,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
so people don't go to Torrington. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
so I think that probably doesn't help either. But COVID really damaged it. Torrington also still is one of the towns that celebrates May Day. They have a
Oh.
May Day festival. They have it every year. I still haven't managed to get there yet. It's absolutely fantastic. They have a maypole in the middle of
Uh-huh.
town. Literally for 3 days, the town shuts down and everything is May Day.
I love that. That's so
The pubs,
wonderful.
everything. They have bands on. They have like a stage in the middle of the town square.
Hmm.
Everyone's involved. It's fantastic. Also, another little side note of Torrington's history. It was the glove making hub of England at one point as
Oh,
well. It
nice.
had a glove factory, and it's quite funny because when I was walking down one of the streets a few weeks back, I did actually see the old glove factory. Now,
Hmm.
the reason I learned about that is because they've got a fantastic museum in the town square,
Oh,
and
cool.
they've got an exhibition dedicated to that. And I was told about it, and I didn't know anything about it. But yeah, it was the hub of the glove making
Was
industry in
that
England.
factory there during the battle? Or like the
Not too sure. Not too
hmm
sure. It could have been. Not sure.
it
Um,
survived it if it was
oh
the
yeah,
glove
yeah.
industry.
Oh yeah. It's not that far from the church, really, actually. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah.
Speaking of
Um,
the ghost, I'm curious about your friend Alan's house, considering that it's
yeah.
literally
No.
on the battlefield.
All you feel at Alan's house is love.
Really? Okay.
There's no bad energy,
That's good.
anything there.
All
Nothing.
right. I'm
Now
glad he's
again,
not
part of it
haunted.
is 1300s, and then the second half is like 1600s or something round about there. Um, and we're normally in the 16th century
Yeah.
part, but I've never felt any bad energy there at all.
Hmm.
But I think that's Alan's aura, and
Yeah.
you know,
His his
no.
vibes.
And I've even
Exactly.
asked him. I said, "Have you got?" No, not really. Now, a little side note about Taddyport. It was
Yeah.
a leper colony.
Really? It's another layer to it. Yeah.
Yes. And then at the back of Al's house is a very small church,
Uh-huh.
and part of his backyard was part of the church at some point. So where did they
Mm.
bury people?
Oh no, in his backyard?
Yeah, so
Oh
he was
no.
doing some work in his yard and he came across some bones. Yeah, human bones. Yeah,
No, that was like a
from the
process
church.
for like reporting that because you have to call
Oh
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
forensic
yeah,
unit and
100%.
everything.
So
Hmm.
that would have been reported, but again, it was a leper colony originally, Taddyport.
No, I'm
So
surprised
that's where the lepers went.
there's no like bad vibes there because that would just breed ill
Yeah, you would
feeling or
think that, but
yeah,
there's not, But the streets are great. Torrington at night are very eerie,
yeah,
very atmospheric. But then again, when you're doing that commemorative march with,
right,
you know, proper flame torches, the old-fashioned style on a big wooden stick, with you know, um, and the you've got the smoke and the fumes coming off of them, and people
sure.
are shouting things at each other, and because obviously I'm parliamentarian,
Hmm.
some of them royalists. We have a bit of banter, so
Sure.
we will shout a pox on the king and all that stuff, and they'll shout Charles, King of England and all that stuff, and so that element of it can be a little bit spooky, I suppose,
Yeah,
walking around the streets at night. So it's got that atmosphere there that something important happened. I think
yeah.
like we spoke about in a previous episode about the tunnels underneath Dover Castle,
Hmm.
it's probably got that remnants
Right.
of that, you know, that energy that's stuck, because
True.
this was turbulent.
Yeah.
Can you imagine just being in this sleepy little town in the middle of North Devon and then all of a sudden a freaking huge army just goes through it. And then not only
Yeah.
that, all your houses get blown up.
That is
Crazy.
the thing that fascinates me the most because it has a lot of similarities, of course, to the American Civil War with all these sleepy little towns in the South. You get raging armies passing through them, and the houses are turned into hospitals or they're occupied or whatever, but they're not
Mhm.
blown up. Like, that's horrible.
No, no.
I bet a lot of
Yeah,
those civilians had to
absolutely.
leave and they had to like rebuild their whole lives because of this battle.
Oh yeah, and I think because I asked that the other week as well. I said, "How?" I said, "What happened to the people at
Uh-huh.
Torrington?" He said, "Well, most of them were here." He said because they didn't know that there was a big army coming.
Yeah.
They didn't have a clue. They
Right.
just sort of hunkered down, I suppose, and just. But again, what armies bring horrible stuff as well. You can't control a lot of those guys, and just like there was probably some horrible stuff that went on from
Sure.
some of the men in the army.
Yep.
As you know with war, horrible things happen to people, which
Right.
won't get into. But I'm sure that went on as well.
Hmm.
So for the town folk, it was absolutely horrible. And not only that, they were royalists.
Right.
So now they're under occupation of this,
Yeah.
you know, Parliament army, which they don't support.
Exactly.
And they've got a horrible 10 years, which is going to, come along because of the rise of Oliver Cromwell, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So let's talk about the church because
Mhm.
again, the church has got that atmosphere to it. Now, again, I've walked through that churchyard at night and it's spooky, but
Yeah.
churchyards are. But you see
Right.
that mound and it's the floor
Mhm.
is like this weird sort of I can't describe it. Stone sort of I don't know what you would call
Like a
them,
mosaic.
tiles or something.
Hmm.
It's really weird flooring
Hmm.
around the church yard and around the church. Yeah, I can't really describe it. But it's just got this, and there's houses around the side of it as well. And I always think to myself, imagine living there.
Gosh, no,
Must be
no,
spooky,
absolutely
you know.
not. There's something about a mass
Literally, their
grave.
front door opens
Yeah.
out onto the church, you know. Um,
Mm.
but there are stories of the church itself being haunted, of course, because of the, explosion.
Right.
In Al's song, he says, on a quiet night, if you listen carefully, you can hear them cry. Now he puts that as a lyric in his song, but that
Yeah.
made me think, well,
Right.
maybe you could.
No one just
You know,
thinks of that. It has to come from some kernel of truth.
exactly.
Yeah.
Phantom footsteps. So a former rector reported hearing footsteps on the church steps.
Mm.
No one was there. Um, Often associated though with a long dead clerk, so not associated probably with the Civil War at all.
Hmm.
Um, a lady in the pew, noises of some moving from pew to pew, someone anyway sitting down or that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Soldier spirits, of course. Um, Creaking and banging noises often attributed to the spirit of Roundhead soldiers. Um,
And these have to be
I
the
don't know why
Torrington
Roundhead
soldiers, right?
soldiers, because it would have been royalists, I would have thought, but there you
Right.
go.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
thing. I was thinking, like, were there any other war casualties or occupations in the area, or is it pretty certain that these are the
do you
Torrington
know
soldiers?
casualties? I'm not sure about, apart from
Mm.
the guys that died in the church.
Yeah.
I've never really. Again, the English Civil Wars is difficult
Right.
because I don't know whether they documented a lot of that stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
would have thought, like you said, there would have been, lots of field hospitals and all sorts going around. But again, this is way before the American Civil War, so
Right.
they don't really have a way of treating
Yeah, it's
people
not
properly,
organized that way yet.
really. Yeah, I mean, they would have done, but you know. And also, there's a local legend which I
Ooh.
managed to find. And it is said that walking around the church 3 times can summon Old Nick. Who Old Nick is, I don't know.
Oh
But there you
no.
go. Who is Old Nick? I have no idea.
Is he supposed to do something like grant you three wishes or
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe. I don't know. It's something that I have to look into. Now, I do want to. So that's basically the Battle of
Yeah.
Torrington. But I want to talk about a particular character before we
Sure.
finish up here
Hmm.
that's quite important. He's quite important in the story of Torrington, but he's important in the story of America in the
Ah.
early days. And his name is Hugh Peters, and he's a rector. Now, he's an absolute fanatical Protestant, really big time. So, on the way down to Exeter, they're going to come across the Salisbury Plains. And what's on the Salisbury Plains? Well, of course, Stonehenge.
Oh yeah, okay.
And
Yeah.
he doesn't like it. He says to Sir Thomas Fairfax, give me some gunpowder, he said, or dynamite. He said, and I'll go and blow up that
The pagan
horrible
monument.
pagan
Yeah.
monument over there.
Right.
And Sir Thomas Fairfax, no, sir, you will not. I need that gunpowder for my siege down in Exeter. You will not be using that. So thankfully, Sir Thomas Fairfax had a brain in his head.
Save the gunpowder,
Um,
not the monument.
there you go. Now, Hugh Peters moves to New England and he arrives at Boston in October of 1635 and is given charge of the church at Salem.
Mm.
He played a significant role during the 1637 trial of Anne Hutchinson.
Hmm.
Now, other claims of fame to him, and again, I would say to people, he again is somebody that I've wanted to go deeper into for ages, but it's very
Hmm.
hard to find things on him. He's such an interesting character.
Right.
He then took a leading part in affairs of the colony, and interests himself in founding of a new colony in Connecticut. He was also active in establishment of Harvard College.
Oh,
So there you
okay,
go,
cool.
one of the biggest colleges in the US.
If not
He's
the preeminent. Yeah.
he
Wow.
is instrumental in a lot of that stuff. Now he does come back to England, and
Hmm.
he was a regicide. Now, who are the regicides? Well, the regicides are the guys that signed Charles I's death warrant, and
Oh,
who was on there other than Hugh Peters?
this
So
man.
Hugh Peters will get his comeuppance.
Yeah.
So again, his connection to Torrington, as I forgot to mention, he was rector of Torrington afterwards as
Uh-huh.
well, by the way. So he served time there.
Wow.
But he is on that death warrant, and
Mm.
Charles II made it his goal to find every single person on his father's
Yeah.
death warrant and have them hunted down, brought to London, and executed. And Hugh Peters got his head chopped off,
Oh,
just like the
yeah.
rest of
He should have
the
stayed in Salem.
uh, they should have done. But to be honest with you, they went to the ends of the earth. Now, there's a fantastic book about the regicides and the
Mm.
tracking them down called The Killers of the King
Ooh.
by Charles Spencer,
Hmm.
Diana, Prince of Wales' brother, Charles
Yeah, that was
Spencer.
familiar. I'll have to check it out.
Absolutely amazing book.
Yeah.
So good. Now,
Wow.
literally, they go to, so a lot of these regicides, they go to places like Holland,
Mm.
where there's a strong Protestant communities. They go to Germany, they go
Hmm.
to North America. Now, from what I understand, only two people managed to slip the net, and they were in North America. The rest of them, even though they went to North America, they still got tracked down. They still
Huh.
got brought back to England and had to pay for the punishment of
Yeah.
executing the King of England.
Wow.
And but Hugh Peters was on that list. Now, who else was on the list? Of course, Oliver Cromwell
You're
and
right.
Bradshaw, the guy that tried Charles I.
Mm.
But at that point, they were dead. And again, as I said, the guy that went against the establishment of royalty
Yeah.
decides once he dies, he wants to be buried in Westminster Abbey.
Is he
They're not
allowed to
having
be?
that.
Right. Like what?
They're not having that. His body is dug back up from his grave, and his head is chopped off. His dead body. And
Point
then
made.
there's this fascinating story of his head, which is still around somewhere, going on his journey around England.
Really? It went on tour?
Yeah, they still think it's around now. There was a documentary about it about 3 years ago called and I don't know whether it's available in the US, but it was on a TV channel
Mm.
here called Channel 5. It's called Cromwell's Head, and it's absolutely fascinating. Now, I think they said it's in a college somewhere, or this head that they believe is Cromwell's.
Yeah.
Whether it is his or not, we don't know. But yeah, this head went on his journey around around England,
Publicity
and
tour.
it's still out there somewhere. So if you've got Cromwell's head, let us know. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
leave a comment below.
yeah, absolutely. But do you know the best thing about Great Torrington
Mm.
is when I joined the Sealed Knot, I wasn't necessarily that interested in history
Mm.
as I am now. And so I can always turn around and say, well, Gettysburg is what gets me into the American Civil War, but
Right.
Great Torrington is what really makes me tick as far as getting into history,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's got such a great, it's had such a great presence on my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so having the opportunity to tell its story and discuss other things that lead off from it was just fantastic.
Oh, I loved hearing about it, and especially when you have a personal connection and you go there and you've been there and you've been a part of it for so long. I'd rather hear it from you than some lecturer who studied it from a book. You get to actually meet
Exactly.
people involved, so that's so cool.
And
Is
there's
there
not much written about it either. That's the problem,
That's
there's
what's
not.
surprising. Yeah, like what? What's up with that?
Also like to point out one other thing before I finish here about what the Cavaliers do as well. So
Sure.
this is another community thing that they do. So every 3 years
Hmm.
they do a community bonfire.
Oh, nice.
And what they do is they spend 3 years building what they're going to set fire to. Now
Oh.
they have built they build full scale, by the way. They
Oh,
built a
really?
full scale HMS Victory once out of wood.
Wow.
They built a full scale. I don't know whether the Victory was full scale actually. I
Hmm.
think but they built the Mayflower recently. That was their last
Oh,
build. They built
yeah.
because the thing is, some people. Now, this is where Torrington yet again is connected to America.
Hmm.
There were some people that went from Great Torrington, went to Plymouth and boarded the
Yeah.
Mayflower and went and
Wow.
settled in the US.
Ooh.
So they even made a mock of London once with, small with Big Ben and everything like that.
Hmm.
But they also, in 1996, the Sealed Knot descended on the town of Great Torrington and they had a
Hmm.
huge reenactment battle and they burnt the town of Torrington. So they had a mock-up of the town, and it was
Yeah.
huge. Apparently, I don't know whether there's any
Wow.
pictures looking about that. I don't know whether they were connected or whether that was different time. But
Yeah.
all I do know is in 1996, the Sealed Knot was huge. We're talking thousands of people descended on Torrington and reenacted the battle, probably
It's
in a
so cool to
field,
see.
mind you. But yeah, though
Yeah.
this Cavalier
Okay.
community, like I said, they do this bonfire every 3 years in at the
Hmm.
end of August normally, and you wouldn't believe the things that they build.
Right.
There's absolutely just to set it alight afterwards.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Fantastic. There's Torringtoners running around here in the United States, and they have no idea.
Yeah. So what I would say to people is, if you ever visit England, make your way down to North Devon and go to Great Torrington. You won't
Absolutely.
regret it. I promise you.
Well, thank you so much, Daz, for joining and talking to us about the Great Battle of Torrington. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow for more awesome expert interviews. I love to talk to people who are very passionate about their field, their subject, or somewhere they live near, such as Daz. Thanks for watching. Bye.